Let's get started. It's 3:31. Matt's time is valuable. We're happy to have Matt Miller back with us to introduce his second series of videos. We appreciate him being here and taking the time, and I'll turn the time over to you and I'll make you a co-host.
Awesome.
All right, so cool. You should have whatever rights you need.
Okay. All right. I appreciate it, Clint.
Thank you.
Hey, it's good to see everybody.
Good to see you.
So let's see. I think I've already chatted with some of you real quick, but let's all, if you don't mind, jump in the chat real quick and tell me who you are, where you're from, and what you do. And then that way we'll kind of have a little more formal way of introducing. So while you all are typing there, and by the way, feel free to drop stuff into the chat at any point. I've got my eyes on it right here. I can see your smiling faces. I can see the chat, and I can see all of my notes and everything. So we should be good to go. So I'll do a quick introduction for myself. My name's Matt Miller, taught high school Spanish here in West Central Indiana for 11 years. I've written some books, among them Ditch That Textbook and Tech Like a Pirate, follow up to Dave Burgess's book, Teach Like a Pirate. Like I said, I live here in very rural Indiana, surrounded by lots of trees and corn and soybean fields, and not mountains like several of you do, which makes me very jealous that you all are so close to the mountains. So got to come out to the conference in March, right before the pandemic all hit, or February, March. It was somewhere.
It was March, yeah, right
before. Yeah, that's right. And that was fantastic. So had a really, really good time there. So so hello to Ruth, works at Merit Academy teaching culinary arts. Excellent. Very good. Beth is here, Jordan School District, digital learning specialist. Good to see you. There's Kathleen, right up above me on mine. Anyway, she's like right up there. So good to see you. I've gotten to see your smiling face since we started. So that's good. Variety of subjects. Oh, you were the one that had less students than me last time, right? Wasn't that you? Yeah, that's what I thought. Oh yeah. Okay. All right, cool. I remember now. I remember. Clint is here. Cedar City. Good to see you. And we also got Douglas, physics and engineering teacher. Salt Lake City, called Academy for Math, Engineering and Science. Excellent. All right. Good to see everybody. Hey, good to see you. All right, cool. Well, let's chat just a little bit today. And I'm going to share some things. And what I would love for you to do is use that chat like it's going out of style. Like, feel free to drop messages in there if you've got questions, feel free to ask them, but definitely share things that you're doing or things that apply to you so that we can all kind of like use this as one big collaboration point. But I'm going to be talking about a couple of different things. But the big focus is we're going to call it in general, rethinking student demonstrations of learning. So this is kind of like a summary of a whole bunch of videos that are going to be available to you very soon that I'm creating, just kind of like sharing out some of the things that I'm going to be talking about. And this is going to focus a little bit on using your learning management system, and then also things that you can do kind of in conjunction with it so that students can show what they know. That's what the whole focus is. So I'm super curious to see, first of all, what you all use for your learning management system. Are you a Google Classroom, a Microsoft Teams, a Canvas? Okay, I thought that there were probably going to be several Canvas, and someone may have told me at some point that we were very heavy on Canvas, which is great, actually. I'll let you on a little teeny tiny secret here. So I just published a book, just got my own copy of it in my hands today, called Do More with Google Classroom. I'm working with a co-author right now to erase that word Google Classroom and put the word Canvas there. So I'm going to write a book called Do More with Canvas, like the learning management system.
Just do a find replace, just everywhere you say Google Classroom, just
it's that easy, I don't even have to use an eraser, I could just like grab a pencil and just be like,
yep. We have some classroom users in our region, but by and large, we're mostly Canvas, especially across the state. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Cool. Very good. So that'll allow me to kind of customize some of this. So I thought that you all would probably be heavy on Canvas. I think Instructure is right up there, isn't it? Where Canvas
We've
is
had a
the,
statewide contract for 5 years, 4 years.
yeah,
Yeah.
nice. Okay. Well, cool. Very good. Um, so, you know, sometime to kind of start to kick this off, sometimes whenever, see, I work with a lot of people that use Google Classroom, but this crosses over to Canvas too. I'll hear teachers that will say, you know, I really need some good Canvas assignments. Can you help me with some good Canvas assignments? And so, oh, Elizabeth says she drives by Instructure every day. I think when I was out there, when I was driving on the highway, I think I saw Instructure from there too. So, but they'll say that. They'll say, I need some good Canvas assignments. And, you know, the way that I see the learning management system is that it's not like, you know, whenever they say that, it makes it sound like everything that they're going to do is within Canvas. But the reality is that Canvas is just sort of the hub to get out to other places a lot of times. There's a lot that you can do inside of Canvas, of course. You know, the ability to record audio and video and how it interacts with a lot of the, G Suite and Microsoft Office and all of that. But a lot of the really good stuff that happens can happen outside of it too. So I've started to think of learning management systems. Go with me on this for just a second, okay? This is like a little crazy analogy of mine that well, anyway, the analogy is that your learning management system is kind of like an airport. And so here's what I mean by it being like an airport. See, whenever you envision a vacation, so just like let your mind wander for just a second and think about if you got to go on vacation between now and the end of the year, where would you go? What would you do? Who would you take with you? Who would you not take with you? And as you let your mind kind of wander on that one, I bet what you're thinking about probably does not involve the airport. The pictures flying through your mind right now probably don't involve the airport. And that's because the airport is a means to an end. It's a way to get to where you want to go, but it isn't the destination that you dream of. And see, I think Canvas and Google Classroom and Microsoft Teams and Schoology and a lot of those other learning management systems, but it definitely applies for Canvas too. It's not the end goal a lot of times. It's just the way to get from one place to another many times. So, you know, you think about it, Canvas is where your students come, they get their assignments, they figure out what they need to do. And then many times they jump off to other tools. They jump off to Flipgrid, they jump off to Google Docs, they jump off to, you know, any number of things. So when we think of it that way, then the big focus has got to be, where do I want to go? You know, that's the way that you use an airport. You try to figure out, where do I want to go? What do I want to buy a ticket for? What do I want to go do? And when you think about it that way, that's, you know, that makes all the difference, I think. So what I wanted us to think about for just a second today, a couple of things. One is, where can we go and what can we do with our learning management system with Canvas? But then also, how can we work within Canvas to make ourselves more efficient, to kind of like make the most of it? So I've got a handful of things that I thought we could kind of go down through and think about. So for one, let's think about assignments for just a second. And I'm super curious to see, for those of you that use Canvas, what your top tips are for making good Canvas assignments. If you have any tips, if you have any ideas or anything, go ahead and drop those into the chat. And then I'm going to kind of shout those out as we go. But I thought that I would throw a couple of other things. And Elizabeth just put it in one word: consistency. Chris says clear instructions. Actually, Chris is kind of reading my mind on some of the stuff that I've got prepared for some of these videos. Clear instructions is definitely part of it, I think. Douglas says being willing to spend a lot of time on them. Yeah, sometimes I totally get that. Clint's talking about video and audio instructions, and you know, that one's on my list too. I think that's fantastic. You know, I think sometimes it's easy for us as educators to get upset with students whenever they don't read the instructions. But I think some of that is on us too. You know, some of it is on us to leave clear instructions and not to go overboard and add a whole bunch of stuff that they don't need. Elizabeth says, make sure they're engaging and not just a lot of reading. Yes, absolutely. So that's one place that I wanted to start when it comes to making sure that it's engaging and not just a lot of reading. And it's this. This is like a little teeny tiny thing, but it can make a big difference. And that is to make use of emojis. You know, little emoticons, like little smiley faces and all of that other stuff in your titles and in your descriptions. So in so many learning management systems, we can throw those things into the title, we can throw them into the description and all of that. And I think sometimes we don't think about that. I'm curious to see if anybody in here actually uses them in your titles or your descriptions. Elizabeth says, I totally do that. There's signals for what I want them to do. Yes, exactly. Because see, you could use them, especially in your titles. You could just use them to jazz things up and make them kind of fun and interesting and stuff, but they can serve a bigger purpose because you see a lot of those emojis can stand for something that happens over and over again. For instance, when I was teaching high school Spanish, we would have regular writing assignments. So I could have the hand holding the pen as the emoji that goes with the writing assignment. And then boom, automatically there's that visual cue that this is a writing assignment. Sometimes we would have speaking assignments. So, you know, in that case, I could have a set of headphones or I could have a microphone, and that could be for a speaking assignment. And so if you have that consistent use of emojis over and over again now, it's like an extra layer of organization. And so by doing that, I think that's one little thing that we can do to make things easier. Another way that I've seen teachers use this that's really cool is they'll use those emojis inside of the description of their assignment, and they'll use them to either as like bullet points, or they'll use them at the beginning of paragraphs to be kind of like visual cues, kind of like what Elizabeth said in the chat. She says there's signals for what I want them to do. Same sort of thing. And see, this could be seen as like a little silly thing, but I think there's a lot more to it than that. You know, there's all sorts of research that talks about how our brains process visuals differently than text. And so, you know, it's one of those easy ways to help organize things and help them get to what they need. Now, when it comes to those instructions, and again, I'm looking back through the comments here, and several of you talked about clear instructions, video and audio instructions. Like, instructions are an important thing. What I think we do sometimes also is we throw all of our instructions into one great big paragraph. And if we start to look at the way that writing is done online these days, for instance, if you look at blogs, you'll look at news articles, you look at any of that stuff, great big sections of text are not the norm. That's not the way that that we do it anymore. And so by breaking those instructions up, break that big section of text up by putting a little you know, empty paragraph, an empty space. You know, you hit return 2 times and then you start typing again. And when you break it up with lots of that white space, it makes it easier on the eyes. That's just basic design principles. And so whenever you've got that extra space, it's almost like a little bit of, resting space for your eyes, and it makes it easier to understand. So whenever you start to use all of these things all together, kind of like little by little by little by little, they add up and they make it easier for students to process and understand and store what you've put in that description. So those are just like a couple of teeny tiny little things. Does anybody else have any other hacks when it comes to that, or any other ideas? Clint says, true, once one line or paragraph per sentence in news stories. Yeah. See, I was a journalism major before I went into education, and those short paragraphs were a big thing that we used in newspapers, because you'd get a big long column of text and it was hard on the eyes if you didn't have those breaks every once in a while. Clint mentioned video and audio instructions, and I wanted to follow up on that. You know, sometimes we think of instructions as just text in our assignments, but There's a variety of different ways that you can do that. You've got your built-in stuff within Canvas, but then you've also got tools like Flipgrid and Screencastify and Loom that you can use to record those instructions. And whenever you record them and you show students and they get to hear your voice and see your face, that eliminates more, opportunities for error, I guess. Does anybody do that? Does anybody record instructions with audio or video? I know that, for instance, in Flipgrid just recently released their microphone only mode, where you can just record audio and have students listen to it. That's actually kind of a nice thing whenever you're doing, like remote learning, or if students are doing a hybrid scenario where they're at home some of the time, because that means that less internet bandwidth is necessary to do the audio, to play the audio, than to do video. So, all right, very good. So I asked a second ago if anybody does video or audio instructions, and I didn't get anything, so I'll assume that.
I raised my hand. No. Sorry, I was being quiet.
Oh, okay. Oh, see, I should have been watching for that. Sorry. Okay, gotcha. Very good. Okay, so let's keep moving for just a second. I was talking earlier about, I was using my ridiculous airport analogy, which I kind of love a little bit too much, I think. And if you take that a little bit further, you start to think about, if you go to an airport and you get on a flight, you have some different types of flights. You have domestic flights and you have international flights, right? Domestic flights are the ones that stay within the country. International flight, I'm really taking this like maybe too far, but I'm gonna go with it. International flights are the ones that leave the country, right? So when you're within Canvas, there's a couple of ways to think about that. Domestic flights can stay within the confines of the stuff that you've got. And I used very vague stuff that you've got terms here to say within Canvas, but also within your productivity suite. That could be G Suite or Office 365. And so there's lots of things that you can do within that. Just the video recording capabilities within Canvas, I think are super impressive. And so you could just stay within Canvas and do that. Clint is digging the airport analogy. I like that. Thanks, man. But then even within G Suite, of course, you've got docs and slides and sheets. You've got Google Drawings. You've got a bunch of that stuff too. Those are your domestic flights where you don't even have to leave the confines of those, that comfortable location. You don't even need a passport to get out of the country, right? But then you can go to the international flights. And those are the ones that go outside of that realm. And that's where things start to get really interesting. Those are some of your exotic places that you get to go, but you do have to have the passport. And so a lot of times students have to go, they have to go log in with a different set of credentials or something. And I'm curious to see what some of your favorite international flights are. Like, what are some of those favorite apps that you like to use that are outside of, G Suite or Office 365, that are outside of Canvas? Ruth says, I do a video for most units to explain and show. Oh, and she says, I'm currently trying to listen while I bake. That's impressive that you got back and you were able to drop that into the chat. That was good. Douglas says Tinkercad. That's awesome for what you do. That's like a fantastic specific tool. Clint says Adobe Spark, which is a favorite of mine. Absolutely. Elizabeth says Quizzes. Joe says Alex Math. Yep. Spark, Desmos, any of these things. Yeah. And so, yeah, whenever students get outside of that and are able to create, that's definitely fantastic. Another thing that we can do to really add to the what am I trying to say here? To the assignments that we can do is we can create templates, kind of like a starting point that students can use to get kicked off and then to go. And I wanted to share, I can't remember if 3 weeks ago, I may have mentioned the templates page on my website. And if I did, I'm gonna try to share my screen real quick here so that you can see that. Here it comes. Okay, so someone was just saying, I don't think you did, which is great because I kind of want to right now. And so I'm going to. pull the chat back up here again real fast. So hopefully you can see my screen. So this is the templates page that I've got on my website. I'm going to put a link to this page in the chat. It's just ditch that textbook.com/templates. These are a whole bunch of mostly Google Slides and PowerPoint templates that I've built or other people have built that we've kind of collected all into one place. And so, this is, I keep coming back to my ridiculous airport analogy. So this is a domestic flight because it stays within your productivity suite. You don't have to jump out to something else. And so with a lot of these templates, what you can do is you download the template, or in Google, you just make a copy of it. And then you can go assign it right out to your students, and your students make a copy of that template, and then they can go to work. So I want to show some of them to you that are out here. So for instance, let's look at this one. This first one is the social media templates. And under the social media templates, these are all things where I've taken a Google Slides file and I've built it to make it look like some form of social media. And then students can interact on that template. It's kind of a core part of the of one of the messages from my book, Tech Like a Pirate, that I wrote about student engagement with technology. It's the idea that you don't need the app to create the experience. So if you think about some of the apps and some of the social media that students really love, what if you could recreate that inside of a tool that they do have access to, like in this case, Google Slides or PowerPoint? So the one that I wanted to show you is a Yelp template. So Yelp is kind of like social media. And if you think about this one in particular, I just brought this up as one example. With Yelp, what are some of the higher order thinking skills you have to have with Yelp? Well, you have to kind of like classify if this is a good establishment or not, give it a star score. And then you have to back up your decision with some, with some text, with some details. You could also back it up with images and that kind of thing. And so all I did here was I recreated what the Yelp website looks like in Google Slides. And so I looked at the user interface and I tried to rebuild it as best as I could in a Google Slides template. So what could you do here? You could do a historical, you could do a historical review. So you could have, something like, I'm trying to think of a good example. If you can think of an example off the top of your head, drop it in the chat. But like, I was thinking like, what if you had a historical character review a place? So I was trying to think of like, the Treaty of Versailles is the one that I can think of off the top of my head, which has to do with World War I, right? Joe's saying Gettysburg. Yeah, that could totally work. Yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah, so you could have, okay, so for instance, let's run with that one for a second. You could have Lincoln review Gettysburg and be like, what he liked about it, what he didn't. And so you would, in the title, you would put Gettysburg in here. You could have some pictures of it. The reviewer name, you would just change that name. And then it would be Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And then this is where you could write out the review. Now, this is just one off the top of my head, actually off the top of your heads, because you were the ones who came up with Gettysburg. But, and so just like that, now all of a sudden, what have we done? A, we've given it a star score and justified it, but B, we've also taken the perspective of another person. So now we're writing about, Joe, we have similar heads, nice. But we've taken the perspective of another person. Now we're writing from their perspective instead. Yeah, it's like, we're great minds think alike, and apparently shiny heads think alike too. So we're writing from their perspective also, which could be kind of cool. So if they've seen Yelp reviews before, that could totally work. And you start to look through some of the other ones we've got here. We've got some Snapchat games. You could do a Spotify playlist. There's a variety of these different templates. These are game templates. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, Family Feud. I wanted to show you these interactive templates too, because these are a lot of fun. I really like this one. This is an infographic template. So this is just a Google Slides template. I'm going to try to load it up here real quick. And it's got all of these icons around the outside of the slide that you can drag onto the slide. So then you're able to almost like, do a drag and drop infographic to have students show what they know. We were talking earlier about how this whole presentation is about rethinking student demonstrations of learning. This is a way to rethink demonstrations of learning. So this particular one, I'm going to try to load this template up. PS, again, all of these are available at ditchthattextbook.com/templates, which is in the chat. But too many clicks. My internet's running slow and I'm starting to run out of time. But with this one, this is kind of cool because, like you can see here, you could have students add little snippets of text and then drag an icon over. And it's a really nice way to show, for instance, like step-by-step processes. You could say step 1 is this, step 2 is this, step 3 is this, step 4 is this. And with each step, you pair a little icon with the text that describes it. Now, what's also cool with this, you could certainly use the icons to show the steps, but you could have students take screenshots, or you could even have them snap pictures with their webcam in Google Slides to be able to do that too. Here, I finally got this loaded up. So I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. So you could see, for instance, we could take this numbered square and I could drag that onto the screen. That one's number 1. And so I could put a little icon next to it. Let's kind of move this down a little bit. And then we can add just a simple little text box. And we could say, here is the text for step 1. Make that a little bigger. And then we can even see how I highlighted all of those. And then I hit Control D to duplicate. And it duplicates all of those. And so then we could take them, kind of line them up together. I could change the number here to not 1, but 2. We could change the text to, here is the text for step 2. Of course, you wouldn't actually say that. I'm just trying to save us some time. And then you drag another little icon up there. And you see how fast this thing can come together. So basically, okay, I got the whoa buddy from Clint, like I don't have to rush, okay, which I appreciate. So what I like about this is that this lets you demonstrate what you know. Again, we're kind of taking the idea of student demonstrations of learning in kind of creative ways. It lets you demonstrate what you know in a more visual way. In fact, there's research that I always point to with stuff like this. There's this thing called dual coding theory that talks about how your brain processes images and text differently. And so if we can show our learning, or we can do our learning, like take things in very verbal and visual ways, our brain really likes that. You see how I've got 10 of these up here now? I'm going to try to make everything a little bit bigger to fit the space. And I'm going to put a title here, title for my infographic. Make it bigger, 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 bigger. And look at this. Just right in front of your face, in the matter of less than 5 minutes, we put together something that kind of looks like an infographic, and it's just drag and drop. So you might even think about, like, what could you have students demonstrate in a visual way like that as an infographic, instead of typing it as an essay. I was mentioning earlier too, how you could have them show the steps, and you can see this on my screen. You could show the steps by taking pictures with your webcam. So let's see. Oh, it's not going to let me do it here. Let me turn I'm going to turn my camera off on Zoom real quick so that I can use it in Google Slides. Hopefully it's going to let me do that. Try this one more time. Insert image, camera. Yeah, it's not letting me do it. But this is where I could take a picture through my webcam, and then I could stick that on there. So if you could imagine students kind of like demonstrating a skill, taking pictures of themselves, manipulating something with their own hands, and then step by step by step, they're demonstrating all of that. PS, all these things that we've talked about cross over very nicely from the face-to-face classroom to the virtual classroom too. This is something that you could have students work on in person in class, or you could also have them do it from home too. And then, you know, if they need a little bit of support on how it's supposed to look, that's where we can do those video instructions again, and it makes it work. Ruth says, I use Quizlet that does some of that picture skill match. Yes, absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up. You know, for me being a high school Spanish teacher, that was one thing that I definitely learned, is that there's, you know, that great research about the verbal visual, the way that our brain processes both of those works so well in, you know, learning vocabulary, you know, doing any of that stuff. So that's fantastic. Joe mentions that Loom would be a good option as well. Yeah, Loom, Screencastify, Flipgrid, all of those do, you know, really good video that you could do. And the other neat thing too is when you have something like the infographic that I just showed you earlier, you could always have students present that too. And so we could use Loom, you could use Screencastify, you could use Flipgrid and record their screen, and then they could talk about the process. And see, that goes to one of my favorite little sayings, is to value the process over the product. You know, so you have students create something really great, like an infographic. They create some sort of visual, they create something. And then if you could have them talk about their process, now all of a sudden that makes the learning visible. And it's almost like we can peer inside of their minds and see their thinking. And see, to me, that's just as important as what they put down on the screen. You know, think about math, for instance. I always got frustrated with math because I knew the process, but I would mess up one teeny tiny little thing, like I'd forget to carry the 1 or something, and all of a sudden my answer was wrong. But if a teacher would have let me show the process and I could have walked them through all the steps, then I could have shown them that I really do get it. I just made that one little mistake. And so maybe I would get a 9 out of 10 instead of a 0 out of 10 on it, you know. Clint says, and don't forget that many students are interacting with Canvas from the smartphone app. Photos and videos are easy to submit. Yes, absolutely. Like that is made for, just like you were saying, those mobile devices are made for visual learning, you know, so it's an easy crossover there. So let me take a peek at my notes real quick and see if there's anything else I wanted to mention real quick, because I know we're just about there. There was one other quick thing that I thought I would mention. This is a little thing when it comes to using Canvas, is that a lot of times students ask us questions, right? We have a particular type of activity that we do over and over again, and they might ask us questions about that. Or maybe we have one unique activity that we've never done before. We're only doing it just for this one lesson. Or, you know, regular classroom procedure, they ask us questions about that. And sometimes, especially when we're doing remote learning, it feels like all we're doing is answering questions over and over and over again, you know, through email or whatever. Even if we're doing face-to-face learning, sometimes it seems like we get the same question over and over again. What I wanted to suggest real quick, and I've got a blog post about this so you can learn more about it. I'll just give you the highlights of it here, is to use a strategy that a lot of websites use, and that is the frequently asked questions page. So think about this for just a second. Again, this is just a little thing, but it can really, really help. The frequently asked questions page on a website takes the questions that users or consumers or whatever ask you over and over again, and it puts them in a place where everybody can access them. And so if you get a common question from students, or even a common question from parents, stick that into a frequently asked questions document. And then now, instead of them having to come and ask you, what if you direct them to the frequently asked questions instead? And then that way you don't have to spend time typing or responding. Or they start to get used to going to the frequently asked questions instead of going to you. So I've got a whole blog post. And again, I know this seems like it's a really simple little thing, but it kind of gives you some ideas on how you could set one of those up. That blog post is in the chat right there. It's just ditchthattextbook.com/FAQ. Oh, and that's the thing Elizabeth highlighted in her newsletter. That's so cool. She says, I was like, duh, that's a no-brainer. Why didn't I think of that? Somebody mentioned it to me too. And I was like, oh, why have I never thought of this before? And then I thought, okay, I'll just write a little blog post about it. That was one of those where I was like, everybody's probably thought of this, right? And it got really good responses. So yeah. Chris, what? Teach kids to search for answers? Crazy, right? Oh, and Joe, I love that point. He says, what if you had students create frequently asked questions, FAQs? Yeah, absolutely. You could set up a document, like a Google Doc or an online Word doc, and leave it as anyone with the link can edit. And then students could pop in and could do a whole collaborative group one. Or you could have individual students make them too. Love that. That's absolutely great. So lots of things here, lots of things. This is just sort of a quick glimpse into all of these videos that I'm actually going to be making over the next week or so. I've got them all kind of charted out and everything. So I'm going to be cranking those out, and you all should be able to see all of those videos very soon, but I'm excited to get those delivered out to all of you so you can watch them. So, all right.
And if you don't mind, let me just jump in here real quick. Matt, thank you so much. Appreciate your time today. Matt is very busy. If some of you don't know, Matt is right in the middle of his Ditch Summit. Do you want to just take a quick second about that, Matt?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. I'm going to put it on the screen real quick. It's my free online conference for teachers that I put on every year, that I have for the last 5 years. And there are more than 70 video presentations on a wide variety of topics that I've sort of hand selected with all sorts of speakers that present on those. You can watch the videos. You can get certificates of completion for professional development credit. And each one of those video presentations has a PDF notes page that you can download. And so the topics, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that there are probably several topics that all of you would go in there and find and love. It's open it's open now through January 8th. So if you want to go check it out, head to ditchsummit.com and get signed up right here. And the whole thing runs through email. So you'll get emails with links to those video presentations. You can go watch them as much as you want between now and January 8th. So, and thanks, Joe, for reminding me of that.
Absolutely. So a great video yesterday about Educator Survival Guide in 2020, and today,
Right.
Esther Park, a great video with Esther Park.
You've been paying attention.
Yeah. So thanks, Matt. Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Clint, sign us out.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. We appreciate that. We appreciate you being here, taking time.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously busy schedule for us. We've had some discussions on how we're going to make Matt's videos available to everyone. Probably be a combination of available through our website on YouTube, as well as posting them to eMedia so that they're available to anybody in the state of Utah who would want to have access to it. But we will let you guys all know when we have them and how to get to them and all that good stuff when we have our paws on them. So thanks again, Matt. We appreciate it. Again, let me post the role if you want to have Midas credit for today. And if you missed part of the recording, I will have it posted to our Tuesday Tech Talk playlist. If not later on this afternoon, then in the morning sometime. Okay. So thanks everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks again, Matt. Merry Christmas. Enjoy it safely. Vaccines are coming. Things are happening. It's an exciting time of year. Finally some good news in 2020. So thanks everyone. Be well.